today we have a bit of a 405 that co-signs Trump. And it looks like more Operation Declassify. More to come. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. A shout out to the loyal patrons, Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, Let the Truth Be Told, Cold War Jesus, and AZ Infidel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on your Wednesday. I believe it is Wednesday. Yes, it is Wednesday. Hope you guys are doing well out there. And we do have a bit of news to get to. This is a flash stream. Of course, it is not Monday, but it is a flash stream, no less. And we will get right to the news. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I want to give you guys a few minutes to get in because we've got some peculiar stories to get into today. We are certainly not short on, if I can say, peculiarity these days. And we'll see where that takes us. Shout out to Chrysler Imperial H and Proverbed Nation. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all you do and for all your support. So what we'll do is I'll just give you guys just a few minutes, and then it looks like we have also a debate coming up for this eve. We have a debate on the horizon. So once again, this will be we have a loaded or front-loaded week, and we're going to get into some specific stories. So what I'll do is go ahead and give you a brief on what we are going to be dealing with, a couple liners that we're going to deal with. We'll give you a bit of commentary and a little bit of the story on the Trump sign. That sign, I'll give you the deets on that. The sign, not quite sure if it's still there, but looks like it may be shining a light on the dynamics in California, if you will. The Trump sign looks like we got a bit of a declassification of documents between the DOJ and who knows, Washington out of this between the DOJ and the CIA, and we'll see what happens with that, of course. And it looks like Netflix is going to face a little bit of law coming out of Texas. So with the movie, if I'm not sure if you guys have seen the movie, I don't know what you call it, out of Netflix, the Cuties movie. So it looks like the Netflix has been indicted by the Texas grand jury over, quote, cuties, end quote. So if you haven't seen that, you might get over to your Netflix if you're a Netflix subscriber. I know there was a bit of a noise for those who wanted to boycott, a bit of a boycott for Netflix due to the not just the. I think many people were not only occupied. I think the directors, they wanted to say, okay, we'll pull the poster, but I think the content is where they want to still figure out how to euphemize the imagery into it just being purely art. It's purely art, and you have to open your mind, or you just open your mind up so much these days it'll just fall right out. So that's an interesting story. And we do have a little bit of a declassification. It looks like BLM doesn't have the support that the mainstream media claims it does. It doesn't have the propaganda arm. Makes it appear that that everyone supports BLM. Of course, that's a part of the, as I've said, the communist, the communist, the communist plan is to, to divide the people, to make it appear that there's support for what their banner says, whatever that is on the front of the banner, and then to create, neutralize opposition, and then to, to create the resemblance of insurgencies and attacks and violence in the streets. It's a part of the final. That's one of the final part of the final installment. So we've seen all of those, and we'll see where it goes. So when people talk about organizing, that's all under the tutelage of, and that's been done, and that's been done all over the world, whether it was China, Algeria, you name it. It's been Venezuela. We shall overcome, right? The same banner was pushed even long before the civil rights movement, the civil rights movement in the U.S. So same tactics, just different, just a little different co-signers on it. That's it. Just switched it up a little bit. Just shout out to everybody in the stream. Philly1234. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for coming in. So I really appreciate you guys for taking care with the Channelytics. So if you have hit that like button or unlike button, if you are throwing caution to the wind by sharing this stream out, that's also very helpful. And also, if you just make sure you're still subscribed, I think that's even more just a fundamental or just basic that you can do. All of it's support, but it's also a part of what I call the Channelytics, or helps to combat algorithms and stifles and obstruction there. All right, guys, thanks so much for coming in. So let's jump right in. I will not keep you guys too long. This is a flash stream, and we're going to have a couple of interviews, some imagery, and a couple of liners, and then we're going to get you guys on your way on your Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for coming in. If you're not sure if you're coming in, if you're driving by with the window down and you're not sure, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to go in. Thank you so much for considering Black Spring with Autumn for news and politics on your Wednesday. Shout out to everybody once again in the stream. So what we're going to do first is, I'm sure you're curious, as I'm sure you can hardly contain yourself when it comes to that sign that says Trump. So we're going to go there first, and we're going to take that story from, the Gateway Pundit. And I thank you guys so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. We will have some imagery and some sound bites to go with that. So let's just go ahead and get into the full context here. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Actually, you know what? I'm getting a little bit ahead of everything. So that's going to be our first. That's going to be our first order of the day. But before I get into that, I want to offer what I'm calling an opening statement, if you will. So let's go there first. So what we're going to do is, I'll go ahead and put you guys to the front of that story. So this is actually coming from the Gateway Pundit. Hope you guys are doing well on your Wednesday. Thank you so much for choosing Black Spring with Autumn. You do have choices out there, and I do appreciate you for choosing Black Spring with Autumn. I really do appreciate it. Okay, so with that said, we're gonna just take a few, just a little bit of warm up here. So with the confluence of everything that's going on here nationwide, and even the global influence, because we are not without, we don't operate without global influence, and so we'll get to that another time. But just for kicks, for starters, before we go into our Trump cosign on the 405, if you caught that, that's interesting. But just for kicks, Does America believe in truth? Does declassifying or exposing matters? Does it matter to the American people, whether it's pre-election, post-election? Does it matter? I know we've seen things time and time again. Those of you that follow, whether you're following politics, whether you're following culture, whatever you follow, or whatever's your values are, does that matter? Does it matter? I mean, is there no truth? Is there no left or right? Is there, from a moral standpoint, is there a right and wrong? Is there woman or man? I mean, we have all of these transformative ilks and paradigms that have been or are new, or ways of retraining the way we think. We have newspeak, if you will. We have these idioms. We have, and even George Orwell, not only did the 1984, not only did that book shed light on, or give insight on something like this, but it also foreshadowed the language. I mean, the language. I mean, I'm sure you've heard within the last, I think we'll give it 5 years or so, maybe even 10 years, within the span of 5 to 10 years, you've heard of people referring to truth as your truth, his truth, her truth. Well, what is truth? If everything is a spectrum, then there is no, are we declaring that there's no absolute? I mean, well, I guess that kind of brings us to that whole 2 + 2 = 5. I'm just saying, this is, welcome to Bizarro land. I mean, if there's really, and I'm mentioning this because of the amount of declassification or the exposés that keep rolling out. They're rolling these things out. Well, it just seems that, right now, or these things, as long as people can justify things in their minds, which is a dangerous place, that seems to prevail over truth. And even history. Is there such thing as history or a history? Does it matter anymore? I mean, there's a lot of things that have been declassified. A lot of things to be declassified. Is it a matter of literacy, or if you declassify things, I'm going to be honest, the people that need to read these documents are not likely to read these documents. And I'm not even going into the education system right now, or the failures, or the pitfalls, or the reform that is needed there. But we do have functional illiterates in this country. And functional illiterates tend, maybe not all, functional illiterates tend to not be curious, or they're not going to look into anything else. I mean, are we full on postmodernism? I mean, there's many books have been written on this, and it's in our faces right now. It's in our faces. So I'm going to keep going here before I dive into this whole bit. But yes, and then also the values are changing. It's like our values are becoming more secular. I mean, if you look at just an instance in which, we have Americans choosing safety over freedom, or even the freedom of thought. That's what they're choosing. staying healthy, staying safe. I mean, do you think that speech that Trump made post release from his hospital room changed these people's perception of this whole CV? It hasn't. We have grown men that would scream bloody murder, no matter what they know about their own bodies, or regardless of what their own medical history is. They are absolutely terrified. They're terrified. And am I saying that you shouldn't be concerned? No, everybody has everybody is informed by their own. I would assume, and that's maybe not fair to assume that everybody should be informed by at least their own health, or at least where their current health standings are, and if they need to make extra precautions or take extra precautions, that they are doing just that. But do you think Trump's return to the White House, full salute and all of these things, do you guys, I mean, there's many different kinds of people out there, and they are not in the least bit inspired. And they're in the same way they're not inspired by him doing that, they're not inspired to go read anything else. They've already got their minds made up. And that kind of docile and demoralization that's taken hold of this country is very much shaping the values. I mean, is there justice? This is why, they're losing a lot of people. I mean, you can go into I'm saying the faith in the justice system and all these things, they're losing a lot of people on that. They're losing a lot. And I'm not saying that, I mean, what are we, under 30 days? There's not enough. I mean, to me, if for those people have already made up their minds, I honestly think they've already made up their minds. So people made up their minds just looking down at their sleeve, their arm every day. So that's, I'm going to go in that, and that kind of segues us into shout out to everybody in the stream. I'm going to do a really quick shout out to everybody, and then I'm going to jump right into the Trump sign that appeared off the 405. So shout out to Chrysler Imperial H, Proverb Nation, Philly 1234, Philip J. Turner, Patrick J. Forums. Shout out to you, Killer Whale Channels. Thank you so much for all that you do. Let's see. Right, shout out precisely, and I'm going to get right into that. We have Operation Declassification, and it just seems that the right, they're underground in declassifying, and nothing happens. They're dropping bombs, but they're not hitting anybody. Like, what's the point? I mean, you have, I'll go into that once we get into it, but shout out to everybody in the stream. So let's just go ahead and jump right in, as this is just a fresher, this first story right off the cuff. And that is, of course, the Trump sign on the 405. Nothing earth shattering, but definitely a different consensus, a different consensus exists in SoCal, no matter what the narrative is. I bet it was undeniable, and a lot of people's heads were exploding. So let's go ahead and go with that. So this is coming out of the Gateway Pundit. This was actually published on yesterday, and around 10:54, written by Cassandra Fairbanks, and that looks like a sky view. Sepulveda Pass. So look, the activists have put up a massive Hollywood style. That's very much in the style of Hollywood. I thought that was very, very, of course, it's very, very prominent. It's a nightmare for the Hollywood, for the Hollywood loyals. So Hollywood style, quote, Trump sign off of the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. The sign was put up sometime overnight between Monday and Tuesday near the Getty Center. The letters are 20 feet tall and a whooping 70 feet long. So it's undeniable that you could see that sign. So also, you have some people that were actually tweeting. It looks like a Samantha Cortez. Someone put up a Hollywood-style Trump sign on the 405. Yes, it's real near the Getty Center. And they tagged Trump in. This is at real Donald Trump. The sign is about 10 feet high on the 405 as spotted by Mark Kono's Sky 5. So that's well documented. I'm sure the Twitter rats and Twitter the Twitter sewer went bananas. Let's see. So this is the group behind the sign said in a statement provided to the Gateway Pundit that, quote, the idea behind this was twofold, end quote. First, they said that it was a, quote, psychological terror op designed to counter the psychological terror ops that the Democrat-run government of California has been running on its citizenry since the lockdown, end quote. Second, it is a sign to other Trump supporters, quote, that there is hope, end quote. So it looks like Matthew, this is a tweet. This is a Twitter. Trump supporters erected a massive Trump sign in Hollywood, California. So it looks like I have a bit of that for you. So I'm going to plug you into that. Shout out to everybody in the stream. It's kind of a fun fact, right? All right, so there you had it, ladies and gentlemen. If you had a chance to, if you're passing by that on yesterday, or if you didn't get a chance to see it, well, at least it's been, it's been cataloged on some level. You add that to your Twitter and tweets items to be historic items. How about that? Add that. All right, so we'll continue there. You'll be interested to find out the fate of the sign. Quote, by being on the 405 looming over Westwood and the Getty, we have taken our message right into the belly of the CA, the California Progressive Beast, end quote, the statement read. Quote, it is a signal to all of the war-weary citizens here behind enemy lines that they are not forgotten and that there is hope and others like them here in Vichy, California. They added that, quote, since Trump's hospitalization, its interpretation may have changed to that of a get well card. But as Trump rises like a phoenix from the flames of a hoaxvid-19, that's cool, I love that, hoaxvid-19, we hope the former interpretation is the one that sticks, end quote. Okay. It is unclear when and if the city will remove it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I'm sure I enters right the EPA or the environmentalist or the guardians of the wildfires will come out in outrage. I'm surprised. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. So shout out to everybody in the stream. Hope you guys are doing well on your Wednesday. So that was a bit of a fun fact, if you will. Shout out to everybody in the stream. So we're going to pull that one and we're going to go right into our next story. So speaking of the declassification, we're going to go in. There's news coming out this morning, which there was talks of this coming out prior to this morning. But apparently Devin Nunes appeared on Dobbs yesterday and he mentioned the declassification and looks like we have it this morning. So let's do a little landscape and then we'll go right into Trump reauthorizes declassification of all. So we'll just have a little bit here And then we'll go right into we're going to get that from our liner on zerohedge.com. And we'll have a couple more stories coming right up for you. So thank you guys so much for all that you do. I really appreciate you for being here on your Wednesday and spending the time. So let's just hear a little bit from Dobbs. Hi, alien believers. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for listening. And shout out to everybody, and as well as the followers on Periscope. Thank you guys so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the interview with Lou Dobbs and Devin Nunes, and then we'll get the liner from Zero Hedge on this declassification. So we'll see what happens this week. If they're calling this the Red October, I don't know exactly how red it will be or what the implications might be, but we're going to follow it up, and we'll start with Lou Dobbs and Devin Nunes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn.
All of this up and more. Congressman Devin Nunes, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, author of Countdown to Socialism, available now. And it is, Congressman, great to have you with us. Let's start with these allegations about Haspel blocking access to declassified documents. And how successful can she be if indeed she is?
Well, we've worked closely together with the director for many, many years. I hope that that's not the case. I've read the same stories that you have. The key to all of this has been full and complete transparency and the maximum release of documentation. So no matter what intelligence agency has it, we need it, and we need it now. The American people have a right to know about this information that is still being classified. And so, look, we're continuing to work as well as we can. I will tell you that Director Ratcliffe has been a breath of fresh air. He was on our committee for a long time. He was also on the Judiciary Committee. And he has been in there doing his best job to try to make sure that the American people have a full picture of what was really going on back in 2016. And that's really the key here, Lou, that this has always been the key, because it never made any sense why the FBI would pick up a document like this Steele dossier that was just garbage and use it. That never made any sense. And so we need all of that documentation from 2016 to get out.
Well, we also have to look at what in the world the Inspector General, who's been lauded by Republicans and Democrats alike, oddly enough to me, investigating the investigators. The fact that Horowitz did not take umbrage with that process of the FBI, or as former Director James Comey yesterday told the Senate, everything was being done by the book, in his opinion, throughout. This is mindlessness. You were amongst the very first to introduce what was really happening, this plot against the president. It is clearly that. It is orchestrated among the national left-wing media, the Democratic Party that has become an outrage in this country, and the intelligence community working hand in glove with the Democratic presidential nominee of 2016, Hillary Clinton, and her campaign and the Democratic National Committee. There is no guesswork here. It is obvious. Why in the world will the Justice Department not react?
Well, I believe that they are, and I will say this. It's quite possible that the IG, Horowitz, that you're referring to, did not see all of these documents, because in fact, I am quite sure that documents that I have been able to review recently are documents that we didn't have during our investigation that were clearly relevant, that quite frankly, every American needs to see the documents that I have seen. And that is, it's just wrong because as everyone knows, we had a full-blown investigation that I was leading back in early 2017. We had subpoenas out for this information.
So you need a logo. The obvious choice is going to Fiverr and finding a logo designer in seconds.
And there was clearly an orchestrated effort to keep certain documents away from the legislative branch of government, both House and Senate. And that's unacceptable. And so, I don't know where, I know everybody wants to know where DOJ is at on this. Look, I don't know, and I should not know, and nobody should know where this DOJ investigation is at right now. But what we should have is that every document that's in the possession of the United States government should be put out, because you are exactly right, and this is the problem moving forward. The intelligence services in this country have been corrupted by the Democratic National Party and their propaganda arm in the media. And this is a problem that only third world countries have. And as the Republican leader of the Intelligence Committee in the House, I have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that never happens. My colleagues and the American people are counting on us to make sure that information gets out.
You're exactly right. And we should point out that everyone who's been elected by the American people to serve in Congress and the Senate have precisely the same duty. And in too many cases, they are not fulfilling that duty. In fact, they're violating their oaths to defend this Constitution and the American way of life. It's outrageous. Let's turn to John Ratcliffe, who you just mentioned. Indeed, he has done the nation great service in declassifying and making known these documents, and most recently and most explosively, the documents that show that the intelligence agencies, at least some of them, believe that Hillary Clinton actually originated the idea of the Russian collusion allegations against Donald Trump and his campaign.
Yeah.
Where will that go? And why is it, in your judgment, that the FBI never followed through, despite that referral from the intelligence community?
So this is something that we actually did work on. We were mocked at the time by the propaganda arm of the left, the media, every establishment group in this town, because we said there was a tradecraft problem here. And one of the criminal referrals of the 14 that we've made is exactly on this issue. And so Director Ratcliffe now has put out this information that we knew about some of the information, but it's far worse than I ever imagined. And the American people need to support the Director of National Intelligence. He has a responsibility on the executive branch side to fully brief Congress and to fully get this information out to the American people.
The president is now in a race for re-election. It is we are told by many of the same polling organizations that were entirely wrong in 2016, that he is running behind in a number of battleground states and nationally as well. And apparently there has been a decision made at the Justice Department not to release the information that the American people need for there to be true transparency and about what will come, if anything, of the Durham investigation. This is not child's play, and I think, frankly, Congressman, that the Attorney General is playing the American people, perhaps the president. I'll put it straightforwardly to you.
Well,
I am very uncomfortable that this has taken so long.
Let me tell you what I think it is. So I do have confidence in Director Ratcliffe, and I do have confidence in the Attorney General, and I do have confidence in the U.S. Attorney out of Connecticut. But I think here's the issue. We've seen it time and time again. The media knows that Durham is sitting on, when I say the media, that basically means the Democratic Party, is sitting on something. It's the biggest scandal in American history by far. And so what they did is they ran a series of fake news bombs that they dropped on the U.S. Attorney out of Connecticut. And I can't say this because I've never spoke to the U.S. Attorney out of Connecticut, but I think it always gives pause because so many people pay attention to what the media is saying. And, I would encourage everyone at the Department of Justice to ignore what the media is saying. And I can tell you clearly, this doesn't involve this election. So when you're talking about the dirty cops at DOJ and FBI, former Clinton folks, Clinton campaign people, that has nothing to do with the that are going on right now. So I would encourage them, if there's something that should get out before this election, it better happen. Because look, if, I don't know what's going to happen in the election. The president is facing tremendous headwinds. I still believe the American people are going to make the right decision and he will be reelected. But if it comes out later that there was something that really would have changed the direction of this election, I mean, it'll look once again like the intelligence services were doing what, and the DOJ was doing what, backing up the Democratic Party, and it will, I think, lead to really bad things in this country. And the president, and I'll just make sure, I want to point this out. The president mentioned this the other night. The left continues to say, and the media says, "Are you going to accept the results of the election?" And Donald Trump did a good job. He probably should have expanded on it more. It's Biden and Clinton and Obama and the media who never accepted the results of the election. They corrupted our justice system, and they just about took out a president of the United States. And that coup attempt continues to this day. It's ongoing as we speak.
And because of the national left-wing media operating as, instead of being the fourth estate, they are now the fifth column in this country, and they're working in perfect alignment with the radical Dems, what has become the party of hate, and the deep state. And to not mince words again, this president has been under attack from the Democratic Party, from the Democratic Congress, and the Democratic leadership for over 4 years. And the result has been exoneration, 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 and they even pressed with a phony impeachment inquiry. It is outrageous. By the way, they did succeed in stealing the election, the midterm election of 2018, which changed the balance of power in the U.S. Congress, as you well know.
Yeah, the hoax was used, and the Mueller witch hunt was used to raise money to fund their 2018 elections.
And to destroy a presidency.
That's right.
Congressman Devin Nunes.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And that does bring me back to a bit of that brings me back to the question of declassifying things and what will that actually mean for those involved, or does it mean anything? And also with that, we'll go to the actual act of the declassification. So it looks like at this point, the president has requested that these documents, that everything be declassified, and we will see how far that goes. So with that, I would like to take you over to Zero Hedge, and I will share that with you. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Hope you guys are doing well on your Wednesday. So this is a reauthorization. It's a reauthorization for the declassification. So with that said, we're going to go to, all right, so this liner comes from Zero Hedge. Trump reauthorizes declassification of all, quote, Russia hoax, end quote, documents in late night tweet storm. So it looks like last night, this was written by Tyler Durden, and this is authored by Sundance via the conservative Treehouse. Last night, President Donald Trump transmitted an epic tweet storm, seemingly targeted toward all officials within the executive branch and the intelligence apparatus writ large. Okay, so as you can see before you have the tweet. It says, this is Donald Trump. I have fully authorized the total declassification of any and all documents pertaining to the single greatest political crime in American history, the Russia hoax. Likewise, the Hillary Clinton email scandal, no redactions. So it looks like a response came in from a Paul Sperry. When all the documents are finally declassified and all the redactions removed from reports, the nation will see that the FBI and the CIA not only knew the Russian, quote, collusion, end quote, allegations against Trump were a political dirty trick, but that they were in on the trick. Okay, so according to this, one important note of caution, there's a big difference between, quote, authorized and ordered. On May 23rd, 2019, President Trump authorized AG Bill Barr to declassify all documents, and despite much optimism, nothing happened. Go deep. However, the president references that lack of inaction in these next series of tweets. So we're going to see, we're going to see what's going to happen here. I mean, how many people can keep sitting on a log, or how many are they exposing themselves? So according to this, another tweet, Donald J. Trump says all Russia hoax scandal information was declassified by me long ago. Unfortunately for our country, people have acted very slowly, especially since it is perhaps the biggest political crime in the history of our country. Act, he says. Splat, splat, splat. That is exclamation point in my my vernacular. Splat, splat. Use splat, splat for many things. But presumably, quote, people, end quote, who, quote, acted very slowly, end quote, would pertain to AG Bill Barr, FBI Director Chris Wray, the CIA Director Gina Haspel, State Department Secretary Mike Pompeo, and former ODNI Dan Coats. President Trump ask those agencies now to act. President Trump also expressed the same frustration many of us feel about how these agencies and institutions have operated only to protect their own interest. He even retweeted the meme of Bill Barr to drive home the point. So according to here comes another from the Twitter storm. Donald J. Trump says, "Can't believe these con men are not being prosecuted. Pathetic." And it looks like Paul Sperry follows it up, developing threats from the FBI and CIA of gray mail, or the threat of revealing state secrets if cases go to trial, has also been hamstringing the Durham investigation, sources say. So you have, of course, more tweets here. And of course, you have more of Trump following it up here. So I had to consistently fight off all of this scum, achieve more than any other president in the first term, and then talk chaos. They created crimes against me and this administration. And Greg Jarrett chimes in, says, stunning revelations expose FBI's Trump probe as dirtiest political trick in U.S. history. So, of course, it's going on. And Donald J. Trump in his tweet says, taking too long. Media is in on it. A true scandal. According to Greg Jarrett, the Brief podcast, new documents show the Russia hoax far worse than we thought. So we'll close this one out. Whether anything comes of this latest, seemingly stronger emphasis and request from President Trump is an unknown. However, again, this is an authorization for release of documents and not a direct order. There are likely legal reasons for this approach, and no doubt there are advisors around the office of the president who want him to take a more cautious approach. Several people are pointing toward an announcement of a press conference by the DOJ Wednesday morning and attempting to connect the tweet storm to the presser. However, my gut tells me they are two distinctly different topics. So it looks like you have something here coming from the U.S. DOJ, the Department of Justice, to hold virtual press conference on a matter of national security. So yes, that press conference, ladies and gentlemen, is in progress. I am not streaming that particular item, but definitely it is there. Shout out to everybody in the stream. I know this is a little bit thick, but it's certainly, it's very apropos to the opening statement on truth and truth. What is truth? Yeah, I think we have people that have a bigger affinity for fraud, and fraud. They choose fraud. We're available, so we'll go ahead and clean this, round this one out. So perhaps it looks like Wednesday, October 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if you guys are on the East Coast, that particular meeting is being held, or it's already been held. It started a few hours ago, but we can keep our fingers crossed. Whatever the case may be, we will receive the answer later this morning. Interestingly, albeit likely unrelated, the specific participants in the presser hold offices that are directly connected to the previous 2019 indictment of Julian Assange. So we'll see what happens. This is pretty pretty thick, and I don't know if anything's going to come of it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I mean, many people have been holding out for a while, and many people have lost faith in Barr. Um, Barr was Bush's right hand, so I don't really know. I'm not sure between Barr and Durham. Who knows? Who knows? And of course, it'll be politicized, or they'll claim that the validity of it is lacking because of the election. So I just think it's so 11th hour that we're not going to have a report from what I gather. So we're not going to have the Durham report before the election. So, but then at the same time, it's how many reports do you need? I mean, how much? It just seems like they just keep building mounds and piling on. Like so much truth has piled on with all the confluence of everything that's going on. It's not seeming to have any effect on where we are. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to DJ Vision Barnett. How are you? Thanks so much for coming in. So we have that. And then I'm going to take you over to another story. We have a bit of a BLM. We have, and here again, it's the influence of the media. The media seems to be running the roost in this country on so many levels. It's dangerous how much they're running the roost. And so this is going to come once again from Zero Hedge. And it's, you might think twice about the popularity or the perceived popularity or the support for BLM. And so this is the liner comes from Zero Hedge. As BLM co-founder claims Joe Biden is part of, quote, violent white supremacist, end quote, system. So that's a bit of an interesting spin. Of course, this is written by Tyler Durden. And according to this, Vice President Joe Biden would like America's youth to believe that he has bent over backwards to, quote, really listen to the demands of young progressives, crypto Marxists, including the activist in Black Lives Matter. Unfortunately for him, the transparent pandering hasn't been all that convincing. Even after Biden and his fellow Democrats tactically indulged the worst excesses of these so-called, quote, activists, end quote, anarchic rioting and violence in cities big and small across America. It seems the former Veep, who played second fiddle to America's first Black president for 8 years, has failed to win the BLM crowd over. The latest evidence of this has been found in ABC News interview with several young activists who are still out in the streets peacefully protesting, tell the press that they might consider voting for a third party candidate instead of Biden. Third party candidate. Was that the Green Party or? Not sure. I'm sure who's running as an independent. That's that we'll do a whole nother segment just on the voting. And yes. Okay. So we're going to keep going with this one. While ABC also interviewed some young activists and organizers, one of the most prominent voices was Dr. Melina Abdullah, one of the co-founders of the original Black Lives Matter chapters. She still serves as the leader of the group's Los Angeles chapter. In the interview, Dr. Abdullah lamented the fact that she is being forced to choose between two old white men who both represent America's history of, quote, violent racism. Quote, people are feeling dismayed that the choices are between, a violent white supremacist and another person who represents the same system, end quote, she said. Biden infamously said nothing about the violence unfolding in America's streets until he realized that it was hurting him politically. Another activist attacked Biden for being out of touch with the American proletariat. Quote, I think sometimes Joe Biden and Trump and our party on both sides are blinded by the struggles that the lower end of Americans are feeling today, end quote, said South Carolina-based activist Lawrence Nathaniel of the group, end quote, I can't breathe, before adding that he has been weighing the idea of casting his vote for a third party candidate. So the report is merely the latest piece of evidence that Biden's campaign has failed to garner enthusiastic support from leftists who supported his erstwhile primary rival, Bernie Sanders. It just goes to show trying to pander to the proponents of identity politics is merely a drain on political capital. So we're going to give, this is coming from ABC News, so we'll just watch a little bit of this. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Just watch a little bit of this. Thank you guys.
Back to one of the issues that played a big role in that debate, race and policing. Protesters turned out in droves, many for the first time, to call for change in a system they say discriminates against Black Americans. But will that activism make a difference at the ballot box? ABC's Rachel Scott has more.
They've taken to the streets, chanting the names of Black Lives Lost. A summer of racial unrest now turning into a call to action to vote on Election Day. We first met 23-year-old Ariana Evans back in May. It was her first time demonstrating. It's been almost 130 days since the death of George Floyd, and Ariana has been marching ever since.
We want institutional change. We want police to have better training. We want them to do their jobs, to protect and serve us. We want to be equal. That's all.
But after months of demonstrations, the air heavy with exhaustion and disappointment.
You've been protesting for more than 100 days. Have you seen any progress in that time?
All we've seen is that they're not listening.
In the weeks following Floyd's death, both Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill agreed on the need for police reform, but were divided on how to get there.
And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're
in
talking about, Chris. That's
well,
not what
that-
they're talking about.
that's
He's talking about
exactly-
defunding the police.
That is not true.
With Election Day around the corner, Ariana says she's backing a candidate that doesn't reflect the systemic change she wants to see.
As young people, it is our job to fuel this democracy. If we do not get out there, if we do not vote, if we do not save our democracy this time, we might not have the chance again.
From a slow kickoff in the Democratic primary to the general election, Biden has struggled with enthusiasm among Democratic voters. In California, activist Melina Abdullah is working on the ground to register protesters, but believes the excitement that once energized the Democratic Party has since faded.
People are feeling dismayed that the choices are between, a violent white supremacist and another person who represents that same system.
The call for change heard around the nation. Down in South Carolina, 27-year-old activist Lawrence Nathaniel told me he won't be voting for Trump, but he's not sold on Biden either. He's now considering voting for a third-party candidate.
I think sometimes Joe Biden and Trump and our party on both sides are blinded by the struggles that the lower end of Americans are feeling today.
But a third-party candidate has never won a presidential election. And in critical battleground states, those votes could tip the scales for either candidate.
Organizers are now working overtime to educate and mobilize young voters.
Just from May to June, the amount of people we registered jumped 15 times. As far as we could tell, that was entirely driven by George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter political awakening that was happening.
Latasha Brown, co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund, touring through 12 cities in key battleground states to register voters. Her goal now, using the momentum from the protests to restore hope in the democratic process.
To be Black in America means to be 3 times more likely than white people to be killed by police. To be Black in America right now means to disproportionately suffer the consequences.
To be Black in America, it means that we are able to navigate in spite of those that have seek to kill us, to harm us, to marginalize us. In spite of that, we've been able to actually push and force this country to make democracy be real.
From coast to coast, activists believe the reform they want to see will not be determined by just one election. Their fight pressing forward past November.
In the midst of protest, a recognition that no matter what the outcome is to any of these things, we have to stay in the streets.
And Rachel Scott joins me now from Washington. Rachel, I wanted to address some confusion that can complicate the conversation around race, which is already
Thank you guys so much for joining me on this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And that was a bit of you got a taste of your dynamics and also the effects of the confluence of George Floyd and all of the rallying around BLM and the mission. I still think that the mission is very much their mission is very much lost. If there is a mission to be had, then it needs to be an organic mission. It doesn't need to be a mission started by white liberals. And that's not, if that alienates anybody in here, I gotta give it to you straight. The thing about it is, what the thing about it seems to be, what seems to happen is, and Black people have been warned about white liberals from other activists in the Black community going all the way back to the 60s. They've been warned about that. And to me, it needs to be on org. If you're going to do a movement, it has to be, you have to have your objectives, and you have to have an actual, you have to have a plan, and it needs to, and it needs to be, it would be more beneficial for it to be organic. It doesn't need to be, do you need to import people? Do you need to import people? And not to say that other people of other backgrounds can't have empathy for the Black community, but then there it goes back to the warning that you received back in the 60s from Malcolm X. It doesn't need to be a white liberal or white liberal organization, because that's where you get your infiltration, and that's where the manipulation has come in. That's where the useful idiots have been used. And I think that's where, they're responding to things, but I wonder if any of them have actually read. Did they read the manifesto? Did they read the objectives of BLM? You can't go out here and aimlessly throw your support behind something and you don't know anything about the organizations or their founding. That's just not a smart thing to do. It's not a smart thing. It doesn't matter what your background, what your cause, what your convictions are. You cannot blindly throw support. You cannot blindly throw money at things when you don't know the root and you don't know what the actual mission is. You don't. And I'm saying this is more of a direction at the Black community. If it were really about the Black community and sustainability, then it would be people from the Black community making those efforts. You would have your elites. Where are your elites throwing their support? But no, they're all bought and paid for by China. They're not coming out. They're not putting their money behind anything. They're out here telling you that you should be voting for communism or voting for socialism, or they're out here telling you how to stay broke or how to stay down. They know that there's money in making. They know that there's money to be made off of your misery. So they've all slipped into that. They've all slipped into it. So, that's that's not this show for today, but I'm just saying that, that was my first time watching that. But I'm just thinking, if you really want, even they've been on Don Lemon. I think, was it Terry? I don't know what's his name, the guy that went on to CNN of all places, and he was talking to Don Lemon, and Don Lemon told this guy right out. Was it Terry Crews? He told Terry Crews, he said, BLM was never for the Black, was never intended to be for what's happening in the Black community. Okay, then what else do you need? If you're not going to read anything, if you're not going to research what you're doing, then you're really in no man's land. You really are. You're really in no man's land if that's what you're going to do. You have all of these, this country has the elite have got their tentacles all over everything in this country. It's not just the Blacks. They've got it in the education system. They've got them all over. They're trying to get them into your children now, beyond education. There was talks at one point that they wanted Kamala Harris, when she was running, she was talking about a 12-hour school day. Well, what exactly would they be doing with your children for 12 hours a day? You know, but you know, according to the UN, children are the agents of change. You guys remember Greta Thunberg? That was their Time Magazine's person of the year. So I'm just saying, you know, if you have a cause, if you have a conviction, then it has to be done with a level of conviction, and it has to be done with some level of objective. And you cannot throw your support behind people blindly doing that. And I say that also when it comes to both sides. When I look at, and that's a whole nother show, this platinum plan. You can't blindly throw money at things and not know anything about anything about the construction, or know anything about the chains or the paradigm involved. You can't do that. You should have. And the thing is, I'm actually, in some ways, the thing about it is, yes, we do know that there's a level of elite. We do know that they don't really identify with people of all backgrounds. Maybe they don't, but it's still upon us to be educated, and it's still upon us to self-educate and not put everything and ask Big Daddy government for everything. They cannot make everything right. They can give you government granted rights. Civil rights are still government granted rights. They're not natural. They're not human rights. They're not inalienable rights. So I just think that, you know, I just think that looking for leaders and looking for leaders and martyrs, I think that's been the wrong approach. I think we need to be problem solvers and engage in systematic thinking rather than systematic outrage. It's not going anywhere. That approach is not going anywhere. So, all right. And for our final story today, the final story today actually comes out of our vetted source, The New American. Shout out to everybody in the stream, Definition of Anarchy. Thank you so much for coming in. And you guys keep your eyes open. I think there's the VP debate is tonight. So that's going to be hope you guys got your pastime, your jelly beans or your popcorns, and hope you've got all of that ready to go. So that'll be interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our final story, which is going to come from our friends at the JBS. And that's going to deal with the Netflix film Cuties. Hope you guys are doing well. So just to give you a little bit of info on our next segment. So what we have coming up, this segment of our show is brought to you by our good friends at the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility. And with God's help, a better world. The JBS is a constitutional and educational organization that's been around for over 60 years, dedicated to upholding and defending the Constitution and working to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this country. The JBS does not endorse any political party or candidates. Rather, it focuses on the education, training, and development of the American voters. So, with that said, I'm going to be taking you to that story, and I will be sharing that screen with you on this segment. Hope you guys are well out there. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for joining me from wherever you are, and hope you're off to a great start of your Wednesday. It's hard to believe it's already Wednesday. Maybe it's just hard for me to believe. Maybe you guys are already in full swing of your week. The Live Effect. Thank you so much for joining me on Black Spring with Autumn. Thank you for coming over from Periscope. Shout out to Old Head Deuce, Crazy Chick Sheena. I'll get into some of your comments here. I'll get some comments, and then we'll go right over to the Justice for Cuties. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Let's see. DJ Vision Barnett says, we are on our way to protest like the Russian Revolution, elected trained by Marxist and separatists. Crazy Chick Sheena says, exactly. They keep pandering to get the Black community's vote It's scary, actually. And Crazy Chick Sheena says, how is BLM helping the Black community, but say they support anti-family values? Thanks so much for coming on. And Philip says, I'm glad I was never on Springer. Okay, maybe that wasn't for me. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the story and maybe give you guys a few minutes after that. Hope you guys are doing well. And I'm going to share this story with you guys from our vetted source, The New American. Netflix indicted by the Texas grand jury over cuties. Imagine that. Let's see. StreamYard. Okay, for now. Let's see. Okay, so here we have a story for you. All right, so Netflix indicted by the Texas grand jury over cuties. This is written by Raven Clabeau. All right, so got your nice graphic here coming out of the from Netflix. Netflix has not only faced massive public backlash over its decision to release the controversial French film Cuties, but now the streaming platform has been formally indicted by a Texas grand jury for distributing material that many say amounts to child pornography in connection to the release of the film. According to the indictment, by releasing the film on its platform, Netflix, quote, did then and there knowingly promote visual material which depicts the lewd exhibition of the genitals or pubic area of a clothed or partially clothed child who was younger than 18 years of age at the time the visual material was created, which appeals to the prudent interest in sex and has no serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, end quote. Though the indictment was filed on September 23rd, it was not made public until Texas Republican State Representative Matt Schaefer announced it Tuesday via Twitter. Cuties follows 11-year-old, quote, Amy, a Senegalese Muslim living in France who finds herself caught between her family's traditional values and a group of rebellious young girls in a dance troupe. The film, which has a TVMA rating, won a jury award directing this at Sundance Film Festival this year and is described as a coming of age story. But critics panned the film's sexually inappropriate portrayal of minors. Netflix and the film's creator, writer, and director Malmona Ducour have defended the film as a, quote, social commentary against the sexualization of young children, end quote, even as the film is equally guilty of that very sexualization. Quote, it's an award-winning film and a powerful story about the pressure of young girls that young girls face on social media and from society more generally growing up. And we'd encourage anyone who cares about these important issues to watch the movie, end quote, a Netflix spokesperson said on September 10th. But despite these claims, Netflix was compelled to issue an apology before the film had even been released on the platform for the pedophilic promotional artwork and raunchy trailer that first propelled the film into the public spotlight ahead of its September 9th release. Quote, we're deeply sorry for the inappropriate artwork that we used for Cuties, end quote, a Netflix spokesperson said or told Fox Business in a statement, quote, it was not okay, nor was it representative of this French film, which was premiered at Sundance. We've now updated the pictures and description, end quote. The indictment even cites the platform's marketing of the film, asserting it was, quote, authorized or recklessly tolerated, end quote, by upper management at the company. Though the political opposition to Cuties has been largely bipartisan, Republicans have led the charge against the film. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas labeled the film, quote, child porn, end quote, and called for a Department of Justice investigation into its potential legal violations. In a letter sent to the Justice Department on September 11th, Cruz wrote, quote, the film routinely fetishizes and sexualizes the pre-adolescent girls as they perform dances simulating sexual conduct in revealing clothing, including at least one scene with partial child nudity, end quote. Quote, These scenes in and of themselves are harmful, end quote, the letter adds. And quote, it is likely that the filming of this movie created even more explicit and abusive scenes, and that pedophiles across the world in the future will manipulate and imitate this film in abusive ways, end quote. The Daily Wire reports Representative Jim Banks of India also called for Netflix to be held accountable for the film. A letter written by Banks and signed by 33 of his colleagues asked Attorney General William Barr to prosecute Netflix for distribution of, quote, child pornography, end quote. A public backlash against Cuties prompted multiple online petitions, one of which amassed more than 700,000 signatures before disappearing from change.org, calling for its removal. Just one day after the film was released, the hashtag, quote, hashtag cancel Netflix was at the top of Twitter's trending list in the United States and the UK. Global research firm Yipit Data revealed in an interview with Variety magazine that by September 12th, Netflix cancellation rate in the United States jumped nearly 8 times higher than the average daily levels recorded just 1 month earlier. Yipit Data told Fox Business that Netflix shares dropped by 3.34%. Still, Netflix has staunchly defended the film and continues to do so in spite of the indictment. In a statement sent to the New York Post on Tuesday, the platform reiterated its stance that the film is a, quote, social commentary, end quote, meant to draw attention to the sexualization of young children. Quote, this charge of child pornography is without merit, and we stand by the film, end quote, a Netflix spokesperson told the Post. Okay, so is that heavy enough for you? A little wordy in there. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Shout out to Alien Believers. And yes. So for those of you that haven't seen the film, I personally haven't seen the film, but I do, from what I saw, it was very, very much, it was very mature, very, very provocative. And it's not something that I would allow my children to watch if I had children, but I would not approve of that film. And, you see, they keep getting caught up into, they want to redirect your attention to the art. You get it? You see what I'm saying? That's the distraction there. Let's redirect now. Let's not make it a question of morality or pornography. Let's just make it a question of art. You reject art. You don't like children. It's the typical euphemisation of something other than what it is. But the thing about it is, this is how people are corrupted. All it takes is a little bite or a little snippet of something, and then if you let this film go, then more will follow. So I think, whether people want to refer to Americans or whatnot, if they want to call you a prude mob, whatever they want to call it, it is time for people to speak out and speak up. There's only so many people that can show up to these cultural kinds of things. I've personally been asked to go down to the council meeting for drag queen story time. I've been asked to do that because why? You don't have enough parents that either they don't have time to go, or they don't know anything about what's going on. But it's on parents to step up and do their job full scale. And this probably doesn't even apply to everyone. It's important to know what your kids are watching. It's important to know what's out there, what's on the lineup for Netflix. I don't even have Netflix anymore. Netflix became quite dark. Netflix has gotten darker and darker over the last 12 months. I mean, they've got a lot of dark programming. And I don't think that's not my deal. And then they've also raised their prices. They started out and then they just kept raising their prices, and their materials got more dark. And, there's a lot of people invested in Netflix. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. Got a lot of people, a lot of high profile and elites invested in Netflix. But I do believe that is a contributing factor to why they are standing by it. They're probably standing by it because they've got the money. They've got the money to stand by it, and they've got the influence. I mean, when you've got the influence to stand by, and I would imagine, I've heard that many of them are pulling their stocks or selling their stocks because of the response to this Cuties film. So, it's like a dark net, we got these shadows. We got all these dark elite shadows on they've got their hands and their tentacles in everything we do. And guess what? Netflix, I'm sure Netflix has majorly profited because of all the lockdowns. And there's no end in sight for these lockdowns, regardless as to how much optimism we throw out there. There's really no end in sight. So what are people going to do? They're going to go to Netflix to get them through their lockdowns. And what are people's kids doing? They're locked down too. They're looking for whether they might start out looking for the cartoons. They might. But if you're not handling or managing what they're watching, then they're going to get a hold of everything that's out there, whether it's appropriate or not. So there you go. And that's very admirable, and it's but we'll see what happens. That's going to be a developing story. And I just follow the money. I mean, you can look at who's who at Netflix. It's probably going to shine a lot of light on Netflix. It's going to shine a lot of light on who's on their board. It really is. So shout out to everybody in the stream, Alien Believers, The Live Effect, Crazy Chick Sheena. Old Head Deuce is here. Not to fear. Old Head Deuce is here. Never fear. He will take care of everything. Who else do we have? Philip J. Turner, thank you so much. Patrick James Forums, Killer Whale Channels, thank you so much. And for all that you do, support the channel. The Definition of Anarchy is out there. Thank you so much for coming in and for all that you do to support the channel. Let's see, who else do we have? We're probably going to wrap this one up within the next 5 minutes or so. I'm going to drop the link right now. If anybody has any commentary, shout out to Proverb Nation. I want to read your comment on the truth. It says, truth today is subjective. If it appeals to ideology you already have or have been influenced to have, then that truth is the truth you'll believe. Ding, 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 ding. That's the sound of the cash register today. Thank you, Proverb Nation, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Anthony Scioli, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Philly 1234 from Periscope, thank you so much for coming in. Chrysler Imperial Age, thank you so much for doing all that you do. Appreciate it. And shout out to the mods. Let's see. Old Head says, well, the people's voices are not being taken into account. All right, so that said, so if you would like to come on, I'm going to drop this link here, and then I'll give you 2-3 minutes, and then we will call it a Wednesday flash, a Wednesday flash. So, and if there's any development for I'm sure we'll have the post commentary on the debate, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that a debate will happen with everything that's going on. Can we really count on anything? I mean, I'm just thinking, the bets are off, So if you're interested there, I'll give you a couple of minutes to come in. So so we saw we had quite a few stories, and just the level of corruption in the country is absolutely staggering. And it's not, and that, my friends, is not something that can be solved at a ballot box. I'm afraid it just can't. You're talking decades. I appreciate you, Old Head Deuce. And so whether you're on the left or the right, you really have to put your real suitcase down. There's a lot of work to be done, and I'm not sure if what's going to happen. I mean, who knows with these? They're calling this the Red October. I don't mean to say that, with thick sarcasm, but I mean, I think some people thought maybe Trump getting the CV was a part of that, but we'll see what happens. But I do think that Kamala Harris and Mike Pence are on tonight, I do believe. Let me see if I can get you some info on that. And shout out to everybody that came over for the last debate. Hi, Gizmo THR 300. Thank you so much for coming in. I mean, we're going to do a segment on, the voting integrity and all that, but we just don't do it this time. As I transition from Periscope to YouTube. Shout out to you, Gizmo. Thank you so much for coming in. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things on the ballot. I mean, if you've gotten your ballot or you haven't gotten your ballot, you got multiple ballots. I'm sure you know what's on the ballot. There's some lunacy on the ballot. And yeah, so I mean, I think California, for one, there's a prop on the ballot to Prop 18 that would allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 at the time of the next general election to vote in primary elections and special elections. So yeah, that's on the ballot. And of course, there's other things that Newsom is doing, including he's making a move on some other things, and we won't get into those on this segment. But so yeah, so we'll see what's going on, and hope you guys have a great rest of the day. It is Wednesday. I appreciate you guys for spending the time here on Black Spring with Autumn. You could be anywhere around the place, but you decided to drive with your window down, or roll along in your car with Black Spring with Autumn. Thank you guys so much. You guys have choices, and it's nice that you picked Black Spring. You chose Black Spring, so thank you so much for that. And you guys have a great rest of the day. If there's a chance that I can stream this debate this evening, I will let you know. And there's probably going to be some commentary afterwards. I would think I'm going to try to do that, so you'll get updates either way for either one of those. But I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of the day.